are you doing?
What?
What are you doing?
Can't you see?
No.
I'm listening to metal. No. Whoa.
Hello,
Oh my God.
and welcome to Music to Our Ears. I'm one of your hosts, and my name is Jake, and I'm a third-year marketing student here at Oregon State University. I've been drumming for about the last 10 years and playing bass for the last 5, so that makes me qualified to host this show here today. And since today's topic is metal music, some of my personal favorite bands are Black Sabbath, After the Burial, and Make Them Suffer.
My name is Amergin. I'm a DJ here at KBVR. I've also been a musician for almost 15 years and a producer for 5. And today's episode, as my host said, is all about metal. It's not the material. Today, it's the genre. Now, before we go into talking about metal, we should probably start with a bit of history of the genre. So Jake, you want to take us off with that?
Sure. So we're going to start in the 1970s with the creation of metal music and a band called Black Sabbath. They had a very unique sound, and that ultimately led to the creation of subgenres such as doom metal and kind of started the British rock wave. Their music featured lyrics that were a cult theme and horror inspired, and their sound was kind of led by their guitar player, Tony Iommi, who had a few unique things that helped the sound, such as tuning his guitar down to drop C, and he had some pedals that were new to the sound, such as his iconic fuzz pedal, and also featuring distortion. Fun fact about Tony Iommi, he actually lost his fingertips before he joined the band, so he played the first record with his bone on his guitar. So
That sounds incredibly painful.
I bet it is.
I would not like to do that. Well, anyway, after the explosion of the popularity of Black Sabbath and the metal genre as a whole, the 80s saw the first real division in the metal scene. On one part were the glam metal groups. These groups dominated the Sunset Strip with names like Def Leppard, Poison, and Bon Jovi. On the other side, they had thrash acts who worked to expand the local scene, with 4 of them coming out of the 80s being Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax, known as the Big Four. Glam focused on surface-level visuals. It was built for MTV. They are focused on flash and style, with little to no substance. On the other hand, thrash was locally grown and expanded through word of mouth and local expansion of records. Often these bands refused entirely to release singles and even music videos. One of the main groups, Metallica, waited 4 studio albums to put out their first music video, which was the very popular music video One.
Then we move into the 90s, which brought some more experimental sounds, still playing with it. We see some alternative metal bands start to pop up, including we see Pantera, Alice in Chains, and Helmet. Hair metal bands start to kind of burn out, which ultimately leads to thrash metal bands burning out as well as they become too extreme. But we see a couple bands that are familiar, such as Metallica and Megadeth, start to sell out and take a more commercial sound. Grunge also starts to take over with bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, and Alice in Chains popping up. And grunge is just a few of the subgenres that popped up, but ultimately grunge led to the fall of metal.
Well, mainstream metal started collapsing, of course, in the 90s. In the 2000s, it came back in 2 primary ways. The first was nu metal, and the second was alternative metal. Now, nu metal technically started in the early 90s, with the dominant sound being, well, Korn off their self-titled album, Korn. And the second was, of course, alternative metal, which really came out of the grunge scene. And this featured groups like Linkin Park, System of a Down, and Slipknot. Also, on the other side were more experimental groups such as Deftones, which really pushed into the shoegaze sound, working with a lot of experimental effects and pedals and pushing that edge of the genre, with a lot of groups coming after them as Deftones continued to evolve their sound, creating more and more experimental sounding bands and genres, and really pushing the limits of what the overall metal genre could do. Now with that, we're going to go to a short break, and when we come back, we will be seeing what OSU students think about metal music.
encountered a single mean person. As much as you insist that you're mean, Jade.
I don't know if I've...
For Black History Month here at Oregon State.
Giving the ball because there's not like a baseball.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all eliminated. Oh, right in the gut. That was.
Just to press your topping down a little bit, make sure they fit firmly on top of the sushi and they won't come out.
Runs around with that too, punching Joker in the face and saving gum. I am tight.
I joined Orange Bean Network as a freshman. It was my second week of being a freshman here, and I was looking for an opportunity to get involved in something on campus. And I had done a little bit of high school journalism, not a lot, but I came up here to the 4th floor. I saw the TV studios, I saw the radio booth, I saw all the computers, and I thought, this is super cool. This is something I want to get involved in. And I joined the barometer team as a freshman. I learned so many things that I would have never learned in a classroom. Not only did I learn how to do journalism, how to design a newspaper, how to produce a TV show, I learned skills on top of that that are definitely going to help me in whatever I go do with my life. These past 4 years, OMN has meant to me to be a place where I can come and be myself, where I can come and challenge myself, push myself, learn and grow. It's a place where you come up here and you think you know who you are, you think you know the type of leader that you are, the type of person that you are, but you'll look back as a graduating senior 4 years later and think, wow, I am not the same person as I was when I stepped on this floor the very first time as a freshman. My name is Lauren Sless. I am the producer of Spotlight at KBVR TV at Orange Media Network.
So even though we both enjoy metal, we wanted to see what the students of Oregon State thought about it, and to say the least, it was a very interesting time. So with that, let's check it out. All right, we're here in the SEC Plaza with
Gabe.
And Gabe, do you like metal music?
I would say so.
You like metal?
I love metal, yes.
You like metal?
I would say so.
Do you like metal music?
See, I don't listen to a lot, and when you said you want to talk about metal, I fully assumed like the ore.
Like on a scale of 10, I'd say like a 3 or a 4. More of a new metal kind of guy.
I would say that my experience with metal is slim, if like really none.
Allegedly, there's lots of screaming and also guitars, probably drums. I assume it's also very diverse, like most types of music.
Well, I guess I know a decent amount about metal, but mostly like deathcore. I listen to a lot of like, I don't know, like Whitechapel and Thy Art Is a Murder. You know, Lorna Shore, that type of stuff.
Do you have any favorite bands you like to listen to?
I really like Gojira.
Right now, I have to say System of a Down, Slipknot. I've been listening to some Disturbed. They're pretty sick. And then I'd probably say Mastodon's pretty up there too.
My ultimate favorite is Bring the Horizon, early Bring the Horizon.
I mean, it's like older thrash metal. Like the only thing that comes to mind is like something like Metallica. Like that's sort of around there, that's where I stay. My friend's been trying to get me into like Pantera recently.
It might be a little bit older, but like Pantera. If you don't listen to old school music, it would be good to start like Judas Priest or Maiden, or even like kind of barely counts as metal, but Black Sabbath.
When I was in high school, I loved the Death, because they were like the founder of death metal, and yeah, they're very great. So if you're into metal slightly, yeah, I would say probably Death, System of a Down, very good.
Also support local music, just whatever that means to wherever you are.
Okay, I think Rhett Michaels, he plays bass up in Portland for like a few bands, and he's pretty sick, yeah?
Yeah, Black Sabbath from time to time. It's a lot of different types of metal that I listen to. But currently I'm really into new metal type of death and stuff like that. Linkin Park, but that's more new than anything else.
What do you like about it?
I would say probably the sound of it. I like the anger of it. The energy of it is probably what I like about it most.
I mean, for me, it's like a specific vibe that I'm gonna go for like during my day. Like one, especially at the gym, I really like listening to metal.
It is a great way to pump me up when I work out. It also is a great way to like let things out, and it makes me really angry, but it's a really good way to get angry. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
I think it brings people together. I think it brings very cool people together, especially. I mean, music has that effect anyway.
I really like the bass lines. I play bass and I think they're really sick. And I also like the shows because they like split the floor and everyone goes insane. So I think it's fun.
They tend to be people that have a little bit more perspective, perhaps, on the struggles of people they don't understand because they've been through struggles that others do not understand. Mm-hmm. So they tend to be attracted to that kind of scene, I think. I don't know, I guess I got a little unnecessarily deep with it, but that has been my experience.
I think like the thrashing guitars, I love that.
A lot of drums, of course the guitar. It's really what I like about it.
So you're not looking for vocals?
Not necessarily. I would say like vocals are probably secondary on what I kind of look for in metal.
How do you feel about the lyrical content of metal?
I like the gutturals and like the pig squeals and stuff.
I can't understand the vocals. It's pure vibes. Yeah.
Obviously, some vocalists are much better than others, but I like it a lot, yeah.
I go off of straight energy when it comes to metal music. Yeah, I'd be shocked if anybody can listen to the lyrics.
I think that it's a great way to express oneself, and I wish I could do screamo. Pretty much.
Are you familiar with metal screams by any chance?
Yeah, I've seen the clips, the videos, the tutorials, but that's about as far as I've gone into it.
Would you like to try and give us your best metal scream?
Do I have to?
Can you give us your best metal scream?
I already lost my voice, but I'll I'll try. I don't know if I can.
Do you know how to do it?
I don't know how to do it, but I'm asking, do you want to try?
No, no shot, man. No way.
Oh no. Let me try. I like, as you can probably tell, my voice is a little shat anyway.
That was pretty good. I like that.
All right. Well, that is all I have for you today. So thank you. Have a great time at the library.
I appreciate it. No problem.
You know, it's the worst thing ever. My hair looks absolutely terrible. Oh, we're back. Anyway, so it's interesting to see that the interest in metal campus is basically zero. A lot of people seem to know nothing, and that makes me a little bit sad, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, definitely interesting. I would have thought people knew more metal. You know, I grew up with it, started listening to it about in middle school, so just listened to a lot of different bands. And it was interesting to see the people that did know about metal kind of knew some older metal, just probably nothing newer than the 90s. I know one guy had mentioned Pantera, just in that alternative metal that we had mentioned, but no new metal or anything kind of modern. So that was definitely interesting.
Yeah, we really only came across like, it only seemed like one or two people that really like went out of their way to listen to more than what you would consider like the mainstream metal groups. And in terms of like different subgenres, really everything was pretty contained to like alt metal, new metal, and thrash metal. Really nothing outside of that. Which, you know, I think part of that could be like a generational thing. I think it's very interesting that the last episode was, you know, focused on dad rock, because it really did seem like a lot of people that we talked to, their exposure to metal really came from like their parents, which in a way, I guess all people kind of are exposed to genres in that way. But this particularly really seemed like it was kind of just, they were exposed to particular bands and groups growing up, and then outside of that, they really had no other interest in it, you know?
Yeah, definitely for myself, I fall under the generational thing, kind of listen to it through my dad. I'm also interested in, you know, a lot of people seem to be into the grunge subgenre of metal, and I wonder if that's a placement issue. You know, we're here on the West Coast, and it kind of blew up in Seattle. So just seeing the ripple effects of that, kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as we were talking about before, you know, hair metal grew up on the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles, and the thrash metal scene, you know, of course, it was kind of all over the place. But the main growth of thrash metal really came out of the Bay Area, like I said, in the early and late '80s. So it was really interesting to kind of think about like how localized a lot of that music is, because there is, I think, a very real point of like, you know, of course we have access to the internet, so we can listen to really whatever we want to whenever. But if you're really only being exposed to it by your parents, then there could be a very real point of like, if your parents grew up on the East Coast, they just might not have been exposed to it almost at all, outside of maybe what they saw on MTV every once in a while. But even that, you know, like I said, MTV was mostly run by the glam metal scene, which was kind of annoying to a point. So I don't know. I think it's very interesting that, you know, you really could see sort of a localization issue. Or like I said, depending on where your parents grew up, you just might not have been exposed to it as a child. And that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, a lot of people also just not really knowing all those genres out there. So just interesting to see that the overall consensus was just not a ton of knowledge about metal. But I think with that said, we're going to toss it to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about our top 3 bands and why we like them so much. So we'll be back right after the break.
All right, we go live in 5, 4.
Ready, camera 2. And wipe it.
Welcome to KBVR TV. Come join our team.
One thing I really love about my job is I get to work with a lot of different people and have a lot of fun with them.
Oh man, the bullpen, it's honestly my second home. It's always like something's going on here, it's always music playing, but at the same time, it's like that one big family feel here. So yeah, that's what the bullpen means to me.
It's a place where we like to foster a lot of our community, where you get to know people really well, a place to hang out.
What I like about OMED in general is just like, it's just like the community aspect.
It's just such a fun place to work. I always like to say it's the best job on campus.
It's like the one place like where like you could be like radio, work for a magazine publication, you can do everything and like it's kind of accepted and normalized, so yeah.
It's just so much fun. I can't stress that enough.
Why not work here? It's a really cool place to be.
Is this thing even on?
Hello everybody, this is DJ Trainwreck. The show is Derailed, the only show where a man blows a train whistle in your ears.
Hi, this is DJ Rock Lobster, and you're listening to Happy Hour.
This is DJ Dolomite, and you're listening to The Subduction Zone.
Tune in to hear more at kbvrfm.orangemedianetwork.com or live on the air at 88.7.
And welcome back from break. So we're going to pick up from where we left off. We're going to talk about our top 3 bands and why we like them so much, Amergin. So let's start off with you. We're going to start from 3 and work our way up to 1.
Okay. Oh boy. So if I had to put 3 bands together that were like my favorite, I definitely think at number 3, there's a German prog metal group called The Ocean, or The Ocean Collective, depending on where you're seeing it. And their sound is, I mean, it's prog rock. So it's long, it's very experimental, very aggressive, which for prog rock can be a bit unique because there's some prog metal groups that kind of shy away from that. But I don't know, they're a very interesting group because all of their albums are themed really well. There's one album, it's called the Anthropocene. This is one of the issues. This is one of the slight issues I have with them. All their albums have like the longest names, and it's terrible to remember. But they just have a great sound. I love listening to them. The theming that they do is always wonderful, and they're just a really great group. If I had to pick a number 2, well, anyone who knows me will know that I am a massive Deftones fan. Number 2 would have to be Deftones. Their first one was their range is amazing because of course they started in the 90s and they started very much deep in that new metal scene, and they quickly evolved out of that, which I think in a large part was very good because if they stayed in that scene, quite frankly, they wouldn't have been taken as seriously as they are now because that scene very quickly fell apart. But they moved into this post-metal, prog metal, alt metal sounds, and of course now they've had kind of an upsurge in popularity largely because of TikTok. A lot of their audios have gotten very popular on there, which some people, to some people in the metal community, that is a bit of a strike against them because a lot of them are kind of upset that it's like, oh, well, you didn't go to a record shop or you didn't listen to them through different mediums. So it's like unfair for some people to be Deftones fans, which I think is a bit unfair because, first, people like what they like. If you hear a song and you like the band that made that song, you should be able to, listen to them and enjoy them. And secondly, it's good for Deftones because, if you are really a Deftones fan, then you should be perfectly happy with more people listening to that band and, giving them more support, more money so they can continue doing what they do. So I think that's kind of it's an issue that the metal community has along many other ones. Yep. And number 1 would have to be System of a Down. System of a Down, we were talking about before, generational stuff. I listened to System of a Down all the time when I was a kid. The 3 main records everyone thinks about, Hypnotize, Mesmerize, Toxicity, all of them are insanely good, basically bangers front to back. And they are extremely listenable. And there's a lot of people who, know their songs because they were very popular, even to this day. Once again, they're more mainstream sound, which some people might be a bit like, oh, that's your favorite. And it's like, yes, it is. Because you know what? That's the thing about a mainstream sound. A lot of people like it, me included. So if I had to give my top 3, that's what they would be. I know. What about you? What are your top 3?
For myself, if I had to pick a number 3, I'm going to go with a band called Make Them Suffer out of Australia. They're an Australian metalcore band, metalcore just being a subgenre, meaning they experiment with really heavy verses, but their chorus is clean vocals, so it's a lot easier for people getting into metal to listen to that. Right. They actually have 2 vocalists. Sean does the verses, and they're just really heavy, which I really personally enjoy. Lots of screaming, which you would, typically it's the metal sounds. And then their other vocalist is a woman, which you don't get to see a lot, which is really cool to see, and really pretty voice, does the clean vocals, and it's just a really cool contrast between the 2. So that's why they're my number 3. Number 2, kind of common choice, but I'm gonna have to go with Alice in Chains. I just really like all their songs. They don't have a bad song. All their albums are really great. Jar of Flies is good, Facelift is good. And I just really like the interaction between the guitar and bass for some reason. I just think they do a good job of keeping it simple, but it's just really effective for me. And their singer, one of the best in my opinion, Lane Staley's just an amazing vocalist, so that's why they're at my number 2.
Yeah, it's a real big shame with Alice in Chains how they're, they came up in the grunge scene. So there is kind of a point of like, Nirvana is good. No, there are very few people who say like, oh, I don't like Nirvana. Nirvana's very good. But it's kind of an issue of any band that has that grungy sound that came out basically in that 5-6 year period after Nirvana released Nevermind, kind of gets compared directly to them, which is a shame because you have groups like Alice in Chains, which despite being labeled as a grunge group, are, do have a lot of metal elements to them. And it's a shame that they get so folded into it and compared directly against Nirvana. They're a great group. They are just not all grunge, so it's very unfair to compare the two like that.
Yeah, it is a shame. I think a lot of great grunge bands get overshadowed by Nirvana just because they're such a huge band and everyone knows them. But yes, a lot of great grunge bands. Soundgarden also really good, but just something about Alice in Chains. And then moving to my number 1 spot, also again, just an older pick, but one of my favorites lately. I've been listening to a lot of Black Sabbath. Just Tony Iommi's riffs are just so good, and just from being in the 1970s, just so effective. He didn't have a lot of these effects that we see these bands having now, but all the riffs still are great, which is amazing to see. I'm a big fan of just how the band fits together. I think Ozzy Osbourne's vocals are really classic, and I love him with that band. Wasn't a huge fan of seeing the change to Dio, but for that reason, they're at my number 1 spot.
Very nice. So I have to ask, because before we were talking about how people get into metal, for you personally, how did you start listening to metal? Where was that beginning for you?
I began listening to metal in middle school. I had been listening to rock just from my dad, namely like AC/DC. He's a really big fan of them. And then just kind of adventuring on as you do. From there, wanted something a little bit heavier and started listening to bands like Skillet and Linkin Park. Came out with Hybrid Theory, which is one of my favorite albums from them. And listened to Breaking Benjamin and just stuff like that. And then from there into high school, listening to some heavier stuff, Infant Annihilator, I remember listening to growing up. So those are just some of the bands I listened to. But what got you into metal?
For me personally, I started in middle school as well. For me personally, what really got me into metal was Metallica's S&M album, which that's the live performance they did with the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra. And that was just a phenomenal album, which that got me into Metallica, and that got me into more of the heavier stuff afterwards. Because, there are a lot of bands that sound like Metallica, especially good Metallica. So, that was, for me, that was my personal starting point. But with that, I think that is all the time we have for today. So we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. If you would like to see more KBVR TV content, please check out our social medias, KBVR TV on YouTube, and basically everywhere else. And with that, we will see you all next time on Music to Our Ears.
Audio, man, it's in the air. It's the fluctuations that vibrate our ear holes and make the cochlea sensitive, you can't ignore it, and you try to start measuring it, and it just pulls you in. Well, I used to try to play music on my own, make the sounds from my own hands and instruments. Then I started recording. Upon hearing myself in my recordings, I decided I should just record. When you're a young adult who is serious about pursuing media as a career or even a side hustle, a lot of people won't take you seriously. OMN is cool because not only will they take you seriously, they'll push you and they'll give you all the tools to really try to do something special with it and let you be creative about it. And so that's what's been special about OMN to me. I'm Sam Lay, and I'm a student engineer at Orange Media Network.